Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art2Life podcast. So excited. I'm sitting across from Rukmini Poddar. She is an artist, educator, and designer. Her creative passion lies at the intersection of emotional wellness and creative storytelling, which is kind of where I hang out. And so, oh my God, I'm so excited. We've never met. We met like 5 minutes ago. We do the same kind of work, but we do it differently. She's got this amazing new book out called Draw Your Feelings. There's links in the show notes. It's a creative journal to help connect with your emotions through art. So I can't wait to dive in. Thanks so much for being here. This is so great.
Thank you, Nick. This is super exciting.
Yeah.
Gorgeous setup and so wonderful.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm glad you have this beautiful jersey on. I'm so glad you have an apron because we're going to be making art today. And Rukmini does a lot of watercolor, if you follow her on Instagram, not as much acrylic, so this will be fun for you today. And we're just playing around with making art and doing something. So if you're at home and you're in your studio and you want to make some art, you can start, because that's what we're going to do. And we'll dive in. So first of all, any questions on the acrylic stuff?
I'm just ready.
You're just going to play around?
Yes.
Okay, great. Paper towels are really good because they're like a paintbrush, and I don't know. I was working earlier, as you could see, so my hands are all covered. Okay, so Rukmini, tell us, give us a little backstory. I mean, you're an artist, but now you're sort of realizing the health benefits of this art thing. Just give us how you got into this and catch us up on that.
Yeah, I am an artist who draws feelings. That's the simplest way to put it.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
That's such a simple way to say it.
Yeah.
I'm an artist who draws feelings.
Yeah.
Okay.
I should have mentioned that earlier, but that's how lately I introduce myself, and it always raises a few eyebrows, and always, there's never anyone who just walks by that. I think it catches people because we all have emotions and we want to know what it means to draw them. And I like to say I really stumbled into this. This was not a planned career path. This was nothing I ever really strategized or thought about. I simply drew my own feelings. And
right.
it took me on this journey.
We're all doing
That's what we're all doing. Yeah. And in some sense, I think all artists are artists who draws feelings.
Yeah.
Gosh, wow, I just love this color.
Right, and so do I. And so do I. You know, it's interesting though, like right out of the gate, one of the things that I love that you're starting with is the feeling, which is also what how I coach and everything. So you came to this, like, how did you start to, like, how did that become the thing?
It was for my own sanity. It was for my own expression. It was such a personal project. I started back in 2016. There's these things called the 100-day projects. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I know.
You know El Luna?
Yeah, she was in our building, and I actually interviewed her a long time ago. Not on the podcast. I think she's in Hawaii now, but yeah. Yeah, she was. So she started that amazing thing that just exploded.
It became a global art movement.
Yeah.
That's amazing that I'm having a moment because she's such a personal hero of mine.
Yeah.
I mean, so much. When I was in college, and as soon as I graduated, I basically felt a little burnt out. I was a graphic design major, so a lot on the computer, a lot of branding, and I wanted to just get my hands dirty a bit. And I saw she started this 100-day project, and I am not a person who can be consistent in anything. At least that's what I told myself.
Yes.
Super struggle. The idea of doing something every day for 100 days was a mega stretch. And yet I just said I would play. I just played with watercolors, something I liked, not exactly trained in. And I made like abstract doodles, sort of like this. And in my little Instagram following of a few hundred people, I would post it. And I just posted it every day. And before I knew it, it was some sort of anchor for me, something to come back to, something that I felt excited to see some progress. And I remember by the end, that 100th day, that project had evolved so much in 100 days. I feel like my life evolved, but I felt like if I can do this every single year as much as I possibly can, that would just be a really fulfilling life.
Yeah.
So that was the seed. And the year after, I did 100 days of drawing my feelings. And I drew these little pink characters, and it was like almost putting my journal, like my private diary, up online. And the reason I continued was I would get comments from people saying things like, I have always felt this way, and I never had words for it. Thank
Oh,
you for
wow.
creating this. I
Right.
still remember that.
And you personified them, right? These feelings,
Yes.
right? It wasn't just like, I feel orangey, out of control. You were like, I'm this character and he's
Yeah.
going down a rabbit hole.
Yes, yes, they were all different characters. I would draw them with holes in their heart or giving their heart, or all kinds of emotions. And they were just things that I was going through. I was in
Yeah.
a relationship, I was breaking up, whatever it was. But what I found was that what's most personal became most universal. And that became like this guiding light for
Yeah.
me until now. That
Yeah.
I can get super, super vulnerable, but when someone sees it, they just see a mirror of themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's when I felt like, oh, emotions are like this portal. It's like the universal language.
Yes,
To draw
yes.
emotions, to communicate like that, it
Yes.
hits someone in the heart.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because one of the challenges I see with artists looking to develop their work, and there's this scary thing of like really leaning into what they want to do personally. And that idea that the further you go into the personal, the more authentic you can become. Actually, it might feel weird and you feel like an outlier, but it becomes more universal. And so, that's the same idea, but it works for full-blown doing fine art. Like, right? It's like the more unique you are, the more it will appeal in a way, because other people will connect to it because it's your own quirky thing and they see themselves in it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's what art is. And I love hearing that also in fine arts. And I feel like that's when art is satisfying, when it's an extension of our voice of how we're doing.
Yeah, totally.
So I'd like to say that I found my voice doing those projects. So it came from a very personal place, but I think it was a mix of sharing it online. And at that time, Instagram was still kind of getting started, or, it was slightly different than now. And I felt this real sense of actual community, like, wow, there's people out there that are really resonating with this message. And so I just continued. Like, I did that 100-day project every year for many, many years.
Wow, you just and everyone's doing it, right? Like all those people are doing it. You wouldn't do it by yourself. There was something, obviously, the fact that other people were doing this all over the world or whatever.
That's so right. I hadn't thought about it like it, but it's at the heart of it. It's about community, and it's about not doing it alone. And I think that's my work has evolved also to community and expressing yourself, and what does it mean to draw your feelings together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to draw your feelings together? Like, tell us what happened. What happens?
Oh, I love that. We become witnessed.
Yeah.
I think that's a key part to the whole creative process. One is creating it, expressing it, and the final part that we forget about, it's sort of like it's like a circle that's closing, is the witnessing. And that's what, I started teaching. So at first I was an artist. I was doing this really on the side as a hobby. I would do my graphic design as my career, but I was really passionate about drawing my feelings and posting on Instagram. But teaching was new. So during the pandemic, when we were all at home, I started doing some Zoom classes and throwing it up. And I found so much satisfaction in teaching. It surprised me. It was almost more than creating art. But what I found was it was this aspect of facilitating other people to draw their feelings and seeing what it's like when they're witnessed in their process. Because we can all be at home and we can doodle, but when we do something meaningful and we share it, even if it's in a little Zoom square and we talk about it and we're acknowledged, I saw something shift in people.
Oh,
I saw
absolutely.
like a healing, an opening, and for me that was a turning point, I think.
Yes, yeah. I always say this, we can't know ourselves fully without the reflection of others. And that is it, right?
That's incredible. That's it. Yeah.
And it's an essential human need to be seen, and not in the way of like, look at me, but just like, am I normal like everybody else? Because if you see me and understand me, I am like safe in a way.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I am safe. Yeah, it's there's so many different ways of being seen.
Yeah.
Especially with social media and culture shifting so much, we also can see some other ways of Am I just looking for validation? What is it? But like you said, underneath it all is like a human need of safety and community.
Yeah. So what do you think, and I'm just curious why, like this works, I know it and you know it, where how you came into where you are now and this work and what you're doing, you found your way in your life into this whole thing by simply picking up a paintbrush and making a bunch of marks, playing. Why do you think, because this works, right? This is how what I teach. This is how people blow up their careers and find clarity in their lives and direction and all kinds of insights. What do you think's happening? Why does that work? Why do you simply playing with art materials led you to this, to understanding really your soul's desire? Like, what's going on with that? Why do you think that works?
I'm just closing my eyes because that's a really profound question. Why is that something so simple can be so transformative?
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing that comes up is like, I think we're meant to play. I think playing and doodling, it's an expression of the soul. And it's almost an act of, I don't know, like an act of resistance to play and doodle, because we're kind of brainwashed to work and strive and kind of grind our knuckles and, you know.
Yes, yes.
So I sort of think of my little nephew. I was just at home in Florida, my 4-year-old nephew. It's really sweet to see him because that's what, you know, I see him as doing what kids do, which is just play and run around and be free. I'm like, man, I want to be free like that.
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
So I think this tendency to, you know, why is it so powerful? Because everything in our society and conditioning is telling us not to play. And when we play, we're tapping into something so inherent and so important that I think magic does happen. It's hard to believe. It's hard. I think our logical mind struggles to believe that. But like you said, when you try it, there's something there.
Yeah. You know, I feel like my theory of it is that when we're playing and we don't have a plan, we are we're just making stuff. We're just choosing whatever it is, whatever comes to mind. That's like our intuition. It's the basis of who we actually are. So we're being who we actually are.
Yeah.
And the more time we spend being that way, that opens doors and possibilities. We are actually the most free when we feel most ourselves. And I just think like logging time like that, that's it, right? Like the opposite is like a test, or, you know, you're trying to perform, or, you know, I've got to stand up in front of these people and speak and I'm terrified. Like that's the opposite. But when you're just yourself and you're doing your thing, like the work you're doing now, and I'm making this up, but I can imagine that this is your purpose in a way.
Yeah.
You're hitting your purpose in what you're doing. It's just you, and it's easy, and there's energy, and all of that comes. And you found it through just lighthearted, like, I think I'll just doodle right now.
Yes. My parents are still surprised, honestly. They're like, this all happened from you doodling in your sketchbook?
Right, you didn't go to law school. So your family's from India, right? Mm-hmm. And is it true, like did you know, the classic thing in the family, the traditional, be a doctor, be an engineer, did you have that? So tell us a little bit about your background and that, because you are an outlier. You have done, they must be looking at you like, what are you doing?
Right, right. Like, what's happening? Yeah, thank you. It is, in one sense, it's exciting to do this. And I completely see from the minute I stepped into art school till now that it's rare to see other brown folk, to see Indian, Asian, you know, people of other minorities in a creative field, because there's so much pressure from their parents, usually because their parents immigrated. So for me, it's the same thing. I'm a child of immigrants, and my parents came to the United States. My mom was pregnant with me. I was born a few months later in LA. And lucky enough to grow up in the U.S., it's so much opportunity,
Yes.
So I see it now, actually. I got married last year, and my husband is from India, like proper from India. And even though we're so similar, me being Indian growing up in America, him being Indian growing up in India is such a different background. Like, I'm like, wow, privilege is so real.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So you feel that the freedom here or the openness. How did you guys? I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Like you met a guy in India.
Well, he lives in the States, so he was living in California
Oh,
8-9
okay.
years. But yeah, we did meet through a mutual friend and connected. And that's what also brought me to California.
Oh, I see. Wow, that's so great. How
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Wow.
But
Wow.
what you were saying about my parents, I would say, yes, it definitely exists, this pressure, especially for children of immigrants, to succeed and do a job that feels a little more predictable and safe.
Because your parents are like, man, we're just scraping. We just
Yeah,
got to
they're like,
make this
we
work.
did so much to
Do
bring you guys here.
Right. Don't mess this up.
Yeah. So there is some of that. I will say though, I feel a little bit on the luckier side that they were also pretty open-minded and they saw potential. I don't think they ever expected that I would make money from this. I think like, okay, if you really want to do it, try it, see where it goes, and then get a real job. So they weren't like antagonistic, but it was like, so, really just out of their perspective, out of their experience.
Yes, yes. Wow.
But it has been exciting. I just had a book event. I was visiting Gainesville in Florida, and we had this beautiful sold out book event, and my dad happened to be in town, and it was really sweet just seeing him like beaming with pride. My mom too, they're both there. My mom, she kind of kept looking. She's like, I don't fully understand what you do, but I'm so happy for you.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh
so
my
it was
God.
sweet. It was sweet, and it feels like what I love though is also hearing from other like Indian girls or people who follow me, just being like, wow, how did you do it? How did an Indian girl make a career in art?
Wow.
Because it is hard, but it's nice to know that me doing it helps give permission to other people, and thankfully, it's because of other people that I'm doing it. It's
Yes,
Luna, who
right,
I saw years ago, and other artists that I've just looked up to. Yeah. I did start in a career in graphic design, so that gave a little bit more predictability.
Now, what were you doing? Like book covers or like what kind of stuff?
Overall, it was like branding, it was website design, it was flyers, websites, all of that.
Okay.
Which I did love. I mean, I like it, but I just felt like there was so much more for me to do. I felt a little limited by it.
Well, you're doing something for somebody else. I mean, I did illustration forever, so I know that, you're just hoping that whatever you do kind of sort of aligns with yourself and hits the requirements,
Yeah, it's a bit more difficult working for others and fulfilling another person's vision. For me, yeah, I guess when I think of that word purpose also, some people are like, oh, you've chased your purpose or you were, looking, how do I say it? Running after my purpose. But I tend to think about it like my purpose was running after me.
Sure.
Because so often I have really resisted the idea of making a career out of art, especially out of drawing my feelings, because I just don't know where exactly it's going. It's not exactly the safest, predictable plan.
Yeah.
But every time I try to do something else, I feel like another door opens. So my journey so far has just been walking through more and more doors, not exactly knowing where it goes. I'm sure you can really relate to that as well.
Yeah, it's just follow where the energy is. It's not unlike, developing art. You just pay attention and listen and watch and feel, and that information tends to guide you pretty accurately,
How did you learn to listen? I like the way you were talking about intuition and listening.
Well, it was like, I mean, I feel like you make art and then sometimes your art gets ahead of you and you have to catch up to your art. And then sometimes you're ahead and then you got to catch up, your art has to catch up with you. So when I started, I had visions of cool art I wanted to make, but I didn't know how to really make it. And I struggled a lot with I knew enough to know that what I was making, because I was trying to do fine art, it wasn't that good. And I knew enough to know that it wasn't that good. It's super frustrating, the gap,
Yes.
right? The gap between where you are and where you think
Yeah.
you can be. And then I got better at making, but then I had to catch up maturity-wise with who I was. What do I want to say? Who am I? What am I doing, right? So there's this sort of leapfrogging thing that kind of happens.
They're not all integrated yet.
Right. And sometimes, so I think it was just, I got early on, and very early, I was not happy commercially, and it just didn't give. I loved making stuff, but I wasn't happy like doing illustrations all the time and for dumb projects I didn't care about. I had to. It only worked for me. Art only worked for me if I cared about what I was doing. Duh. Yeah. But at the time, that just seemed like, why can't I do this? Anyway, I did a bunch of traveling and took a year off and traveled around the world. And that's when first time I went to India.
Okay.
And changed my life, and it gave me a lot of time to connect with other cultures and just to see art universally, how it was used, and who was I, and so I just caught myself up more. I just started listening better, right? If you want to listen, just go away and just be with yourself a bit, So I had time to do that. And then I was taught, the art taught me to listen, because like your story, I was just playing around doing these feelings, and I shared them, and all these people were standing there saying that this had value, and that's what would happen to me. I would make something and I cared about it, and most of the stuff I would make, I didn't. I was just trying to survive. It's like your graphic design job. But then I would do something, usually there was no money in it most of the time, but I would just do a project, and I had freedom. I was given freedom. And then that project the covers, the art that I made for it, I was always submitting to these contests and awards. And those were the pieces that where people would hold up and point at and go, oh my God, that's so great. And it's like, God, so I started realizing the more freedom I had, the more value there was in the work. It comes back to what we were just talking about. The value, the universality comes from the authenticity you put in the work. I mean, so obvious now, but then that was just an aha moment. That I did the cover of the Four Agreements, and that was early on, and that was it was an illustration, and it was like, all right, I'll do it. It's only $200, and I had all this freedom, But that was the kind of work I was interested in making.
Sure.
And I was good at that, and I cared about it, and then that got me more like that, and I just kept the more freedom for me, and I coach this, that people have, the more like themselves the work will become. And that's how you create the value, whether you want to do this for yourself or have a career. So,
I love
that. So I guess I just taught, just like you, it's just the art is the teacher,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Beautiful. I love that about freedom, because sometimes, at least I feel like I was taught that freedom is a liability. I don't know if that's the right word. It's in the sense that, if I have too much freedom, I'm not going to get paid because I only find value in someone else's freedom, Yes. So it's such a revolutionary thing to value my own time and freedom.
Yes, yes. It takes a level of chutzpah or kind of, confidence to be like, I'm worth it. I'm going to make something that's good. It took me years to understand that.
Yeah.
But that is so good.
Oh my God. Yeah. And that itself is such a tender thing when do I know I'm worth it? I mean, we're always worth it, but I don't know if this is like an eternal thing that artists grapple with, or all humans, but this, being able to believe in the work that I'm doing, especially when it feels fun and playful, I almost my mind wants to value it less because it's fun, it's not work.
Yeah.
But, what I'm reminded is that makes it more valuable.
Yeah. That thing of it's so easy, I can't charge someone for this, or it was too easy. And I've learned now that it's the easy stuff is the valuable stuff because it's just it just should be easy, you know.
Yeah.
This crawling through the desert on your knees stuff is, I've done that most of my life, you know, and that's not it. So I'm curious, you know, you draw your feelings, and how does this work? So for you, you know, like, I mean, you were saying you have your boyfriends, all the things. Like, is that how you make art? I mean, do you consider, like, you just connect with how you're feeling and then you just do that? Or like, how does it work you're doing this every day? I'm just so curious.
Yeah, especially when I started, there were two ways of doing it. Either I would put something on paper, I had no idea what it was, and then I would interpret it, make a story out of it.
Oh, I see.
Or the other way where I would have something in mind. But for me, words and art is really connected. So I phrased something called obscure emotions, and I would think about it as a language. I would say, oh, that feeling when I want to get lost, but I'm afraid of being found, or something obscure and kind of, you know what I mean? I would put words to it, and then I would create this character, and I would draw it. That's where it started. And then, to be honest, it's evolved in so many ways since.
And why a character? Like, where did these characters come from? You didn't do these characters, or did you, like, watch cartoons? I mean, or like...
Oh, they came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you look at my art now, I have this sort of motif of this single character. You can see on the cover of my book.
Yeah.
I think there's something about creating a character with limited features, like making it not so detailed, that helps it become more universal.
Yes.
Someone who looks at it can just put themselves in it.
Right.
Like my characters, they didn't really have a gender. They were a bit of a blob-looking shape, and yet I was so amazed at how expressive they were. You know, one eyebrow like this, or I would make the body big and the heart small. It was just so much you could share with them, the way I composed it. So that's really where it started, how I drew my feelings. But since then, I have different methodologies, and I like to encourage people, especially who haven't painted or feel intimidated by it, to simply get things on the page and to start with the simplest building blocks, which is color, pattern, line. You know, I have people do a simple line exercise. How can a single line show anger? How can a line show frustration? What colors represent sadness, shame? I do one exercise I love a lot called this color spectrum. And I have them think of a situation in life or an experience where they had multiple feelings. You know, like I was really
like
resenting,
sad but happy that the soul-sucking job's ending, but I'm going to miss my coworkers.
Exactly. And what if you had a different color for all that and put it in a spectrum? And suddenly we're giving form and shape and, you know, making something concrete that's otherwise really abstract, like a confusing experience. We're putting a whole color to it.
Yeah. So people are taking their feelings, which are internal and they're not visible, and then they're making them visible.
Yes, making the invisible visible.
Yeah. So tell me about that, because that's powerful, or therapeutic for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to show that it can be done in 30 seconds or less if people need. I've done a few talks where I pass out small pieces of paper and pens to people sitting, and that's all they have. They don't want to do anything more than that, and I say, okay, in 30 seconds, draw what frustration looks like to you. And then they would draw it, and then they would turn to their neighbor, and they would each show it and talk about it. And for me, that's this great combination of put it on paper, connect with another person, and then talk about why does this represent a feeling for you. So anyway, I like to start there, and it's always fascinating that we kind of have an idea. Everyone knows how to draw certain emotions when we're really told to.
Yes. It's like, you know, people are like, well, you know, I'm not an artist. And I, you know, they always say, you know, my sister can draw a horse, but I can only draw stick figures, you know. But if you say, well, what's your favorite color? They're like, oh, well, pink or magenta, you know, and it's like, why? And it's completely abstract. I mean, that is such a crazy thing, that why would you like a color? I mean,
more than another one.
It's like, what is color anyway? You know, they're already deep in it, you know? So I agree. Everyone, this is available to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
You know, I've been studying a lot of the work of Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you know him.
Oh,
but
yes.
Yeah, anyway, he's really interesting, but he's talking a lot about your past and how the past and how you keep thinking about the past and how that'll dictate your present, and then that mindset holds you there, and so your future actually is just prescribed because you just repeat yourself, right? And this whole art thing is about, doing what's different and new, and that's why playing's so fun. You're just like juiced from it, but. One of the things that he talks about, and I really think it's true, that kind of related to what you were saying, when you have a feeling and you're frustrated or whatever, and you've got it, it's inside of you, and then you put it on the piece of paper and then you talk about it, suddenly it's not you anymore because you're pointing at it. He talks a lot about this. It's like, you are not being run by this. You can see it. And that's a huge key into getting out of its way. Because if you're just unconscious, you're just in like a rabbit, hamster wheel of sameness.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
I love that. That is, and when you asked me about my process, I think I spaced out a little bit, but if I were to make it a little more specific, that's what it is. It's noticing your emotions, separating yourself from it, putting it on paper, and then sharing it with someone else.
Yes.
And I feel like that's the process of transformation. Like that's how you transform anything. So I love that example.
And so tell me about how you work with groups, right? I mean, when did that start? And because you were just like in your bedroom doing this stuff and putting it on Instagram, and then suddenly you did it for like a company or something, right?
Yeah, it started during the pandemic, and it was totally, it wasn't anything I was expecting or thought I even had the capacity to do. But what happened? Oh, I got invited to speak at a Creative Mornings in New York. Are you familiar with Creative Mornings?
No, what is that?
Oh, they're so fun. It's a global art in-person community. They have sort of like breakfast talks where it's free, it's sponsored by different people. You come to these design studios, you get a coffee, bagel, and then they have a speaker that month. And they talk about creativity. It's a networking event, but it's fun and it's really community-based. So they're all over. The headquarters is in New York, but you can go to a Creative Mornings in Chennai, India, or you can go in North America or South America, Europe, all over.
So how many people, is it attended virtually or is it?
Well, it was all in person until the pandemic hit. So I would go all the time. It was just something that really enlivened me. And at least in New York, they would have over 100 people, and sometimes they'd have huge speakers.
So you spoke at that?
Well, I was invited to speak with a few other community members in 2020 about Draw Your Feelings. And the pandemic came, so I did it online. And after that, it just opened up a few opportunities. People reached out, would you do it? Come to a lunch and learn virtually? Will you do this for a friend? So that's where it started. But I also felt that I was just filling in a gap that the pandemic created for connection. And I wanted to offer some Zoom classes. So it started super, super simply. And I was just really moved by it.
Yeah.
I didn't have much of a plan for it. I had these little templates, and I thought we'd just get together and we draw a breath. I had them do some breathing meditations. Okay, what does a frustrated breath look like? What does a tight breath? What does a calm breath look like? And I just had people paint that out and do some embodiment exercises. And I was just really moved that it meant a lot to people.
Yeah.
It was something I always did, and that it was so accessible for people. And it was quite amazing, so I just kept doing it. And sooner than later, I created a course. It was called Learn to Draw Your Feelings. And that course is what became the book. So it all just happened super quickly.
Yeah,
because I had someone interested. A publisher, Penguin, had reached out like a couple years earlier that if I ever do a book, let us know. We like what you're doing. And from the course, as I was developing the course, I just thought this would be a great book. So it started as like a 20-page PDF, and I mean, what you see now is a 200-page book. So I took that seed and I spent a couple years developing it.
And these are all the kind of prompts and your ideas and things that you did for yourself, obviously.
Yeah, I have expanded and I added a lot more. The book is designed to be a journey. I have the first 4 chapters sort of lay the foundation: art as shape, art as color, art as data. And then the last 4 chapters is more about relationship. So how do I draw my relationship to my parts? How do I draw my relationship to others, to my values? What does acceptance look like?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And someone goes through this, and they just deepen the connection with themselves, I guess, is the whole, obviously.
Yeah, with themselves, with their emotions. It's really a guidebook for a new language of expressing yourself. Because so many of us, we have so many big feelings that it feels like even words don't suffice for it.
Yeah.
But the idea is you go through it and you start to really expand your vocabulary, your visual vocabulary,
Right,
and get
right.
the tools of not only drawing emotions, but drawing, how do those emotions interact with each other? What does letting go look like for me?
Yeah.
What does holding on look like? What is empathy? I have a whole exercise on imagining someone you lost touch with, and you create a bridge between you and that person. And
Yeah.
anyway, I went on a tangent, but there's a lot there.
Yeah, yeah. You must have some amazing stories with people who you've unlocked, in a sense, you know? Tell me about some of those, like, moving experiences.
I remember in 2020, at the very beginning when I started doing this, I just remember doing this workshop on, I think it was drawing your breath, super simple. And when one of the women were sharing what they were doing or what they drew, they started talking about how they hadn't picked up a paintbrush since they were a kid. And sharing, their voice broke and they started crying, and they're like, wow, I feel just really good about it. They didn't even have the language for it, but it was such a moving experience.
Yeah.
And I was sort of taken aback. I was like, wait, this isn't me. It's not that I'm this amazing teacher. It's the process works.
Yeah.
I was like, this process actually works. And I think that gave me this confidence to keep going.
Yeah.
And whenever I get little moments of that, I was like, well, the creative process works. Who knew?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it's powerful when someone just has this experience and their voice breaks. And this happens a lot with me and people I'm coaching and people in programs and destination workshops, and I'm always like, that's because it matters
Yeah.
to your soul, like they don't even know. They're just like, oh, I don't even know why I'm crying. I don't understand here, but it's because your soul's like, yes, that's it, you're on it.
Oh
Like,
my God.
You're catching up to actually the true nature of yourself, That's so cool.
That's really beautiful, Nick, how you phrase that. Because it matters.
Yeah.
And that the work that people do that I facilitate for, in some sense, it might just look like they're doodling or whatever it is, but every stroke matters to them, and they're telling a story that matters. And I just imagine, I have this image. I don't have it here, but I have this image of a person and their throat is just full of colors, but it's stuck here. There's like almost like a tape on their face.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's how we all go through life, that there's so many stories in us, so much pain and love, and it just isn't coming forth.
Yeah.
So when you give someone permission to just open that, the floodgates come, and it's really incredible what people are waiting to express.
How do you get people to just pick up the paintbrush? I mean, like there's all these, I'm not creative, I don't have any talent, all the things.
No.
What do you say to someone, maybe someone who's listening, who's like, yeah, easy for you to say, but
I know.
I had this third grade teacher that said I was crappy and it's not for me. But like, how do you,
I know. It's a few different things. Sometimes I can be peppy and say, yes, just remember your 5-year-old self. Remember yourself as a child. And I like to say that there's no child who I don't know who doesn't declare they're an artist, like boldly declare. If someone thinks that they can't drum, like ask your 5-year-old self. And at the same time, I also like to be a little tender with this question because there's so much emotion around expressing ourselves and tenderness around it. And I feel like if you want to meet your inner critic, pick up a paintbrush.
Yeah.
So I also like to bring that some people, when they pick up a paintbrush, it's not just, oh, I'm just scared. There's something real there. There's some real fear. And so I like to both encourage them and then gently guide them, always reminding them that nothing is about the result. It's not about doing something beautiful. Like the messier you can be, the better. Whatever inner critic is, just like take it out and leave it by the doorstep. That's something I like to say also. Whatever I can to help someone get messy. And sometimes it takes a while. Some people will have like a big sheet of paper and draw tiny
No,
on
sure,
one edge.
it's terrifying. I'll
It
just
is.
stay over here in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It can be uncomfortable, but getting people to have like giant paintbrushes, making a mess,
Yeah.
can be really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You must run into that all the time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. People, people have these, they have these perceptions about who they are and who they've been.
Yeah.
And there needs to be like, an art will give you the perspective that like, look at all, like for you look at all the stuff I've made. I cannot be, clearly I'm not what I thought I was 6 months ago. Look at 100 days, look where I am now. Art can do that.
Yeah.
I love that about it. That momentum is created. That there's a trail of things you've made that give you momentum, that allow you to perceive yourself in a new and different way than you thought you were.
That's beautiful.
You're actually creating a new identity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that's like the definition of transformation is creating new. And I love what you said because you have proof. Like looking at my paper, like we can't deny that isn't there.
Yeah. But how do you stop the critical mind, right?
Yeah.
Like people, they are going to look at the artifact of their day, and if they hate it, then like, do you coach on that a little, or do you just?
Because it's sort of just you can't separate the inner critic and art. It's kind of always going to be there. I have so many thoughts about that. One, I go through that all the time with myself, whether it's self-doubt or criticism. It follows me, so I really empathize with anyone who feels that as well. And I would say I've shifted my strategy a bit to trying to figure out what part of me is critical.
Yeah.
What part of me hates it. And just get curious about that instead of, I must not hate my art. I must, almost shoving that away or feeling guilty for those feelings. It's like, well, okay, what part of me finds it so terrifying to create something new or create into a new identity? What part of me is like latching onto my current identity, so afraid to change?
Yeah.
So I think just that question is a really good starting point for me and for those who work with me. I like to bring a little more like compassionate perspective to it.
Yeah. Do you like what's hard for you? Like where is like you're involved in this work and sometimes we do the work we need the most, right? Like why do you feel you do this and how are you teaching yourself, or where is the gap for you? And
that's a beautiful question. I feel I definitely do I teach the work that I need to learn.
Yeah,
for sure. And the gap for me, I mean, I think there's so many, but what's the main one that stands out is being visible is a big growing one for me, which is interesting because I have a book, I'm doing author talks, I have 100,000 followers, and it's really terrifying to be visible for me, to take up space, to use my voice.
Was that because when you were young, you had a big brother that was loud? I mean, like...
Yeah, I think so many things. It's hard to pinpoint. I think being a woman of color, I think just my nature, I think the conditioning of people pleasing and making sure everyone around me is okay.
Yeah.
I've sort of been untangling this for many years, and I just see like, wow, my growth edge is to take up space, to believe in myself, to continuously trust in my process.
Yeah.
I found stepping into business for me has been the biggest growth edge,
the
most uncomfortable.
Yes.
I'm so curious to hear your process, but as an artist, sometimes we're like, oh, I do the art, business, and creating a brand and creating a movement, that just feels so beyond me. So, but that's the best thing I could be doing for myself, is just not hiding.
Yeah.
And that's really where I'm at presently and continuously.
No, absolutely. I get a lot of coaching, and I'm always reading books and everything. And this guy Dan Martell, who's helped me a lot, and But he describes the spaces, like he's coaches on leadership and amazing business guy, and he's like, I am not happy unless I am the person in the room who knows the least. That I am at a conference and I'm speaking and I'm not the authority and I'm kind of not comfortable, because if I'm there, my learning is off the charts. You know, like,
So
and it
good.
got me to reframe, like, it's where it's uncomfortable, you know, like you're trying to learn to be seen, and now you're going to stand up and at a book event and talk about your thing. People forget, they just think, oh, well, this is clearly what you're supposed to do and everything, but it's like actually sometimes the opposite, you know, that we're introverts and we're doing this because this is our growth, you know.
Yeah, it definitely is the growth edge.
Yeah. So when you're making art, like right now, do you sometimes look at the work you're making and go, okay, I want to make this not an emotion thing, or how do you evaluate it? Is it always through, does this feel like how I feel now, therefore it's working? Or do you just sometimes intuitively like make art and then figure it out?
Yeah, I think the latter is a little more enjoyable, or what I've been doing recently. In this conversation, I feel like I've barely looked at what I'm drawing, but I love it. And I don't know, I feel, at least recently, I like rhythm. And so it's less about like what I do, but how I feel when I'm doing it.
Yes.
And I think that's just what I'm going with. It's not always how I do it, but at least right now,
Yes.
like if this is a different emotion for me than being really smooth,
Yes,
and a big
yes.
paintbrush is a different.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. I talk about this a lot, where, and it can be in art, it can be in life, like there's a pattern that we can get into. There's patterns of things, like I run on Tuesday and I love not running on Wednesday because I go do this other thing, and then I have energy again on Thursday and I'll run. There's a pattern of activity that when you do it, it really works. So let's say, so it's not so important how great the run is. The fact is that you did that thing on that day, because the pattern of the life, if you're dialing it in and it's enjoyable, that's really important. Just like when we're doing, and I talk about it in terms of differences in the actual art making process, that I'm doing this and this feels good, but now I'm sort of doing this too much. Now what would feel different?
Yeah.
Because differences are what bring us alive. So now I'm going to do this new thing that's swirly and, you know, and if we're connected to what feels alive for us and we're adjusting and curating based on how we're feeling, that makes the art strong. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, just hearing it's such a great way to practice presence.
Totally.
I never thought about it in the way that you said. I just intuitively am enjoying this, but I'm
Yeah.
realizing, I'm getting super present with just the way my body is making marks, what feels good in the moment.
Right.
And even that life is a pattern is a great way to see it.
It's the differences between things that's where the juice is and the energy, right? Because if we're doing a thing that's kind of, you know, if you have a painting and you're putting gray on it, and then you like, oh, I'll get a different color, I'm kind of bored of this gray, and you pick a color and you're not really paying attention and it's kind of also gray and you're doing that. After a while, it all sort of feels gray.
Yeah.
But the possibility for choosing, you know, light violet with the gray, they're so different. So when those come together in the picture, they activate each other because they're different. They activate each other because there's principles, but also for the person looking at it, they experience the differences too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. I
So
mean,
everything's like that. So
life.
yeah, so you're, and that's why it's Art2Life, because it's understanding. It's like, oh my God, I did this huge long run on Wednesday. It feels so good to like watch cartoons on Thursday because I'm tired. Or I love cooking and now I want to like be served. Or I want to make art and now I want to like study math, or whatever those things are, those contrasts. A pattern of differences. It's a pattern, but you can make different kinds of patterns. And a painting is nothing but just a bunch of as a pattern of light and dark, which are opposite, light and dark. So those are principles that are in every painting, where the staccato, where we feel this way in the painting, and then we go here, and then we have another experience, and that makes amazing art. I don't know, it's so cool.
Oh my God, it's so great to think about that because it gives me more permission to have differences in life because it's so natural. Like you're saying, one day we make art, one day we just sit in bed, and that's what makes life.
Yeah.
And as you said that, I was like, wow, this just gives me a little more permission to do that because there's such a thing of, if I'm making art, I have to show up the same way every day. And like you said, it's like gray on gray.
Right.
It doesn't, that's not how life actually works.
Not at all, not at all. It's not how you, and we're all different, of course, but what feels right and good is the true journey, is the true path that will lead to all the magical stuff that you're experiencing and doing and the impact you're causing in the world. You know, it's so cool and yes, you have effort, and there's, you know, it's like flow state there is a struggle inherent. That's okay, but it's not so much that your day's wrecked, you know, there's tension. I mean, how do you talk about tension? And because that's an important thing, like something that, I guess when someone says if you're telling somebody to take a white piece of paper and show what frustration feels, there's like calm white piece of paper, then there's that mark. But do you think about tension? Do you think about two things coming together that are different?
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear more your description of tension, but I often talk about feeling two opposite emotions at the same time and how there's a tension there.
Oh, yes.
How there's a tension in our emotional experience.
Yes.
How do you draw something that feels really peaceful? Like, I mean, just now I feel like I created tension
yeah,
and
like,
difference.
Like, look at that, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what life is, and I think accepting that is so important to see what that looks like visually because how do I draw an experience that is full of love and grief?
Right. Because life's nuanced, you know, it's not just like a unicorn painting. I mean, it can be, but you know what I mean? It's like, that's where the nuance and the complexity, you know, and the subtlety that we feel grief and we feel relief and we're so sad, but we're also so happy, and you know, like all that. You know, I'm thinking of like my mom when she passed. There was like such a relief and such a sadness and a anger and a empathy and like so much all at once. You know,
amazing, and that's what's so important to talk about because we kind of. Or at least we're expected to live this very two-dimensional life. And I think art creates nuance, which gives people permission to also have and feel nuance in their life because it's there, but we don't often feel it or we don't have vocabulary for it. And so I think, it's just beautiful to make space for that. I really just created something totally bizarre on my paper. Just going with it.
So when you work with a big group, give me an example of like what that's like, what kind of things you do. And obviously if people are more connected to themselves, they're going to be better team members. They're going to like this relates to business and how we interact, right? Because I would imagine that you're doing this for teams, right?
Yeah. I'm just starting to, and it's opening my eyes of like, wow, this really does integrate with the workplace and with teams. And there's a few things. I mean, one is just the emotional intelligence of it. People who feel emotions, and yet, especially in a workplace, it might feel like it's maybe not the appropriate setting to talk about it. I think being able to draw it suddenly is a relief. It gives permission to put things out on paper. It's another way to connect with each other. It creates empathy for each other and then empathy for ourselves that, oh, wow, this is my experience.
Yes.
Yeah, there's this one workshop I do often with large groups, usually online, but also in person, the timeline exercise as a review of your year or some kind of period of time where it's super simple. You draw a graph. So especially people who are afraid of drawing, it's like, it's just a graph.
Yeah.
And x-axis is the timeline, so January to December, and then the y-axis is your range of emotions from super happy to super sad or everything in between. And I have seen hundreds of these timelines. Each one is different. So incredible how people will draw and visualize their year, but not through what they've done, but how they felt.
Oh, that's
And
so good.
yeah, and so everyone comes with this amazing timeline, and then especially when they show it to each other, it's like this act of radical empathy. Like, this is how my year really was. Maybe
Oh,
you saw me at the top of my game, but like
right.
I was grieving.
Yes, right. You think I'm just this successful person, but actually, like, look at what's going on in March.
Totally. Or even they'll show a month and there'll be like 5 colors. They're like, I felt it all, you know? And so suddenly their year and how they feel is like expansive, that it wasn't just a bad year or a good year, but it was a life,
That's
a life
great.
that's full.
I love that. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Simple exercise, but just amazing. You know, the realizations that people get, the connection, and then the permission they have to themselves that like, this is just life just happened this year.
Yeah.
And now I have a visual depiction of it. I have the blues, the orange, the red. It's a whole different way to talk about how
Yeah.
time has passed.
Yes, yes, yes. And so much better.
So
I
much
love
better.
that Maya Angelou quote, people won't remember what you did, they'll remember how you made them feel. Actually, what we're talking about and the subject of this, and I don't know what the name of this podcast is going to be, but feelings first, follow your feelings. I mean, that's
Yes.
really the secret sauce here is that
Yeah.
you just have to connect. This is an inside job, as my therapist would say. You just need to follow what you're feeling, and we don't tend to do that, and that's where and I think COVID was really interesting because I think we got more in touch. We were shut down, and we just were like with our feelings more.
Yeah.
So many things were born out of that, and I think a restlessness and a invention, and I was forced to go on Zoom or whatever. Like you're like a poster child for this. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking also what we said earlier about when you don't really know what you're doing, but you kind of just do it. I don't know in what context, but anyway, just to say that I feel like draw my feelings, teaching, it all came from this place of like profound inexperience.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, but because I didn't know, I sort of made up the rules for it.
Right.
And that was such a relief. Now I'm getting to a place like, I need to create more structure, more rules, be more professional.
yeah.
But it's kind of closing me in. It was
Sure.
I felt so much freedom
Right.
when I just
Turn it into
drew.
a business. You could crush it with this. Like, oh yeah, have fun with that.
Yeah, a lot of pressure.
Yes,
But
yes.
yeah, when I think of those days in the pandemic, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just throwing classes. Oh, this is good. Let's make a course. Oh, this is good. Let's make a manuscript. And this sort of like, I don't know the rules, but let's just go for it.
But you
was
had
incredible.
juice, you had fire, you had energy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So before we wrap, I just want to get what's coming for you. What are you really excited about?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I'm really excited about my first in-person retreat I'm doing in September.
Oh, great.
And I've been thinking about it because I love community. I love bringing people together, but to do it in person and in this beautiful, we're in Mendocino in California, and it's a healing arts retreat. But genuinely, I'm really excited because I'm really terrified by it. Again, what we talked about, this is a big stretch for me. So I've been thinking about it a lot. And sometimes I'm like, why did I sign up for this? And then there's another part of me like, wow, who will I become by doing this?
Yeah,
So that's the question I'm in. Who will I become by doing this? Who will I become by doing that?
Right.
And I think just that question is exciting.
Yeah, my God, that's so great. I found my way into all of this from doing workshops. That's what I'd done my whole life. Before online, before all I did were these little, I just wanted to do art with people. So it just was innocent, but I learned so much. And I think you're just it is powerful when you're in the room with everyone and doing it. It's gonna be amazing. I mean, you're gonna love it, but I still do them.
Yeah, that's where the juice of it is being with people. And
because you get this feedback and you can see and you come up with all kinds of, just don't totally plan it out.
Yeah, do you have any tips for a first timer?
I think you have to acknowledge, you have to create a space, and this took me forever to realize, like, one of the most powerful questions that I asked during a workshop, and I didn't do it for years, at some point, and usually it's day 2, I ask what's hard. That's where that question came from, actually. You know, what's hard for you guys? What feels hard? And man, when people start, because people come and they want to be successful at this thing, and they're all together, and they're not normally together. They just want to be successful. They don't know everyone. They want to make the thing. They want to be the star pupil. But once you open that door to like what people are having challenges with, it comes out. And then other people can help them. And you get everyone helping everybody else. And suddenly you have a container of safety.
Right.
And then it takes off. Then the progress, and once you get over that, then you're all just playing in a room. And then, as you know, that's the magic. So.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, create the container and let everyone create it for each other.
Yeah, but it comes out of acknowledging that we're not all okay.
Yes.
Some of you might be feeling, I remember when, and it's always surprising, the people who I'm just always shocked what people say, who's really struggling, but I was so scared as a teacher to be doing a thing and not, I didn't want to be not good at it. So I didn't want to see anybody who wasn't having success. I just wanted everyone to have a happy ending, right? So I just was avoiding it, but go right into it,
Oh my God.
And then it just decharges it. But anyway, that's just something that's helped me a lot.
That's powerful. Pain is really the birthplace.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, listen, this has been so cool, and then we could talk forever. Can you believe how fast that hour just went?
Actually. I want to keep going.
Well, we can. So listen, you guys, we have all her stuff's on the show notes. Is there still spots in your workshop?
There is.
Okay, so jump on that. It looks
anyone...
amazing. I checked it out on the website. The vegan food. Are you vegan?
Vegetarian.
Vegetarian.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
lifelong vegetarian.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, the food looks amazing, and the place looks great too. So. Anyway, thanks so much, and really, you're doing amazing work.
Thank you so much, Nick. This was just beautiful in so many ways.
Yeah, awesome.
Appreciate it.
Okay, you guys, and before I go, I just want to remind you once again that we've announced our destination retreats. They're going to be in October. They're 8 days, 7 nights, and this year we're going to Morocco and Mexico. These are designed to cause a really powerful transformation, a shift in your thinking, and ultimately your creative expression. It's all about finding the truest version of you using art. You'll be with an amazing group of like-minded creatives. A lot of the spots are taken already, but we still have room, and these are so much fun. We will be having great connecting talks. The food's extraordinary. They're in beautiful places, both of these, and I'll be there. Obviously, I'll be bringing my creative team of coaches and facilitators, and it's just about deepening your awareness and connection to your truest self, which enables stronger, more authentic art and life. You'll be making a ton of art, and so if you're interested, again, artlifedream.com, check it out, and thanks so much. Okay.